Very, very good. As always, everybody who is a regular listener here on Flint Talk Radio is already acquainted with you, or feel like they know you pretty well already by now. And if those who are just joining us, just playing for us today was Laurel Federbush. And Laurel, thank you very much for coming here again.
Thank you for having me again.
And as you see on the scrolling banner there, Laurel's based out of Ann Arbor, and a city about 50, 60 miles away from Flint, kind of the southerly position, right?
Yeah, you might have heard of it.
Yeah, it's everybody I talk to around the world's heard of Ann Arbor because of University of Michigan. So.
Especially the Olympics now. Some of the skaters have trained in Ann Arbor, and some of the other athletes, I guess so.
They did tremendously well, didn't they?
Yeah, apparently.
Yeah, they're bringing the gold, I guess. So, I mean,
of course.
Yeah, just making sure I shut my phone down so I don't get a call in the middle of this talk.
There's so much in demand, it's likely to happen. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like I just had one before he started talking here, so it kind of prompted me to shut it down. Anyway, yeah, that piece you just played, what was that? Who was it from? Or
It's called Shiver. The title, obviously, we've had a pretty cold winter this year, and so I think that gave it the inspiration. It's off my upcoming album that I'm doing a gig to promote on March 16th at 2 p.m. in Ypsilanti at the Ladies Literary Club. And it's my new album has 12 pieces composed by me. It's kind of a short album. I just timed it today. It's about 20 minutes, but hopefully hopefully people will be satisfied that it's a complete album. And one thing that's significant, I composed all the pieces, and I'm doing the album to promote a special fund at the EMU Foundation, that's Eastern Michigan University, and it's a fund in honor of my friend from the same synagogue that I go to, Jeff Bernstein, who's a professor at Eastern Michigan University. So so this is a fund in honor of him, and I'm doing the album to raise money for that fund.
Oh, so that's really, all these songs off this on this new album are all original creative stuff endeavors from you. I mean, yeah. I mean, they're creative, products of yours. I mean, that's really cool. I mean, that's like, I think we talked about that in the past. But we'll approach that again to some degree. The writing process for like music is probably quite a bit different than it would be for a novelist or a prose writer or a poet. I mean,
it's actually kind of similar. I actually do some writing too, so I guess I think of it as a similar thing, but I guess there are differences as well. So.
No, it's like, no, is this person you're raising money for, is this a person deceased, or is he...
Oh, no.
Okay.
Yeah, he's a friend of mine. I guess often if you have like a fund in honor of someone at the university, either they're retiring or, something like, or deceased or, whatever, that's not he's a faculty member at Eastern, and he's just a very inspiring person, so I was inspired to get involved with setting up a fund to promote the two programs he's involved with, which are political science and Jewish studies program.
So I didn't know that EMU had a Jewish studies program there. I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah, I think it's a new thing actually. The other guy, I think, who might be the head of the department is Marty Schickman. He's also a friend of mine. He puts together very interesting programs. I've been to a couple of them. One was on Tin Pan Alley music, and they're involved with a number of programs that you can see. So I think it's a pretty new program, though.
Now this event's going to be on March 16th, like you already said. It's going to be at the Ladies Literary Club, and it's like, is that in a library, or is that a separate building, or because it's on 218 North Washington, Ypsilanti, Michigan, cross streets between Washington Avenue and Emmett Street. So is that like a building set aside just for this organization, or is it?
No, people rent it out for various events, concerts, or I guess fundraisers or parties. And I had been to some events there before, and I really liked it, so I checked into renting it out.
Now, see, I really think it's really nice that areas like in Michigan, like Ann Arbor, obviously, and Ypsilanti, which is I don't. It's just a brief distance away from Ann Arbor. It's like basically they kind of merge together at some point, don't they? They have overlapping areas. It's
I can't always tell what's in which city, so they do overlap sort of.
But both of them have universities. University of Michigan be the more well-known of the two, but Eastern Michigan's definitely no slouch for academic endeavors. And
right.
So I mean, I've never went to classes there or anything, but I've went to 2 local colleges. But I'm pretty aware of that they have a lot of good programs at Eastern. So yeah, this sounds like an intriguing thing, and also it's we'll get into your own your endeavor too with the for the new album. I guess they still call them album, not CDs, even though officially they're on CDs. We still call them album.
Yeah, it will be in CD form. I don't know. I'm calling it album, but I guess one could call it a CD. That would probably be more appropriate.
So you got all 12 of these songs are totally original material.
Yeah.
And it's like that's you're basically going to be premiering this, basically the original material and the CD at this event.
Yeah.
Okay.
And here too, of course.
Yeah. Now it's like as we talk to, we'll give you a chance of maybe play another selection from that this new album. And you've had like 3 albums right now, right?
Yeah, maybe let's say I think 4 or 5 actually, but I mean they're all sort of self-produced. They're my own creations, so it's not like they're released on a major label or anything. These are just things that I give or sell to people I meet or things.
Well, that's an interesting. I was just talking to a guy, Russell Wayne Mettler came in here yesterday to talk about, and he's a musician. He's played with a local band called the Crop Circle, which had a pretty good following in the late '90s. Then he's also does a tribute band thing called Toolology, which is a tribute band to Tool, the band Tool. And we were talking about that. He said there's a lot of good music out there. Years ago, though, you had to get a record label to notice you. Then they signed you up and they marketed it, and to a varying degree, you got a good share of the money. Sometimes, there was more unscrupulous ones out there, and they kind of followed up the works, took money away from the artist. But now you would think that this is a greater chance for the fledgling talent, the budding talent, the developing talent. But in many ways, there's more obstacles to get noticed because there's so many people vying for people's attention out there. Is that what you pretty much experienced too in your pursuit, or?
Yeah, I've never understood the music business. I had some friends in Toronto who were, I was working with really hard to try to get them a record deal. We actually did get them one deal, but it turned out not to be. It was almost worse than not having a deal. It sort of ended up just stymieing their career, and then after that, weren't able to get any deals, and they were, just fabulous musicians. So it's just, I don't know, the whole thing about whether some high-ranking executive at a record company thinks you're special or not, it just seems so arbitrary.
It seems like, well, it is arbitrary. And I mean, we there's a lot of people who criticize the pop industry. And I can see both sides of the argument. I can see the purists, the artistic purists who don't want to compromise their artistic, vision or ideas. But music is something I think has got to resonate well with people to have a viewership, a listenership, to actually have people come forward, buy the albums, go to the concerts, buy the merchandise, support the artist. So it's kind of it's a tightrope to walk. Between you losing yourself in it and it just become totally like a contrived package deal, or also trying to maintain your own artistic integrity and doing what you really desire to do. It's like I don't know how it can be actually carried out. I mean,
right. I'm not much of a business person, so I don't know.
It's like, well, see, a harp too kind of, it's like it's also, let's face it, I mean, it's something that's like there's a beautiful sounding instrument. Music is, but the thing is, to actually play this, you have to have some place where people are going to listen to it more. I mean, you don't just listen to harp pieces are not played on the radio often. You don't have like a person known to be like a harp player and singer along with that, like you have a guitar player. It's like it's basically it's usually a harp playing is usually connected to a larger musical body, like an orchestra.
Yeah, if you listen to classical music stations, sometimes you'll hear some solo harp pieces, but. Yeah, it's often in an orchestra or sometimes flute and harp combination. But if you listen to the pop stations, well, now there's we probably talked about some of the bands that have harps in them. So once Florence and the Machine, or you had on your show Art in America.
Yeah.
So that was really cool. So once in a while you'll see harps in in a popular band, but yeah, you don't hear it as often as guitar for sure. So.
Well, it's like, mandolins, I can actually hear that. I mean, Styx did a song back in the early 80s, Boat on the River, they had a mandolin playing, and then later on, Peter Buck from REM learned how to play a mandolin for a couple of songs they did on this one album. Now, I guess that's part of his repertoire, part of his, lineup of, instruments that he can play. And that's a great sound. I mean, those are great sounds, but they're not really usually connected to, like, the rock and roll industry. I mean,
right.
And harp, I mean, let's face it, I could see where it fit into. I loved Art in America for that reason. They were unique in that respect, and also the lyrics are really good. And their newest album, this one they just came out with, is really good. I don't know if you haven't listened to it yet, or it's really good.
I haven't had a chance to, but yeah,
it's really good. It's really good.
I'd love to, yeah.
You're listening to it, and you feel like you're back in the '80s. And I know people say you shouldn't go that way, but I'm 50.
The '80s had some wonderful music.
Oh yeah, amazing amount. I mean, we've talked about that before in past interviews. It was like a time when it was very eclectic. People were coming from different backgrounds. They're putting together stuff that was just never done before, and I loved it. Now it's kind of staid. It's kind of stagnant. I think it's kind of a lot of the music scene, in my opinion, what's out there in the major part of it's kind of putrefying, in my opinion.
Well, I actually like a lot of the music I'm hearing now. Like, I know that we probably have some different taste in some of the popular music, but I like a lot of the popular songs. But then there are, for sure, some I could certainly do without. So I don't know.
Okay, we'll give for instance. So what person or artist out there would you say you really appreciate? Putting on the spot.
Well, some of the popular ones I like now are Katy Perry, Nicki Minaj.
Really? I mean, I would see a person who is like so when you see a person play a harp, you have a tendency to think they have real highbrow taste in all the music, and that's kind of the the stuff that's on the radio. I'm not saying anything bad about it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. But
well, actually, most of what I listen to just for my own pleasure when I'm driving or something is just popular music. I listen to classical music. I mean, sometimes I have to listen for orchestra parts I have coming up, so I'll know when my entrances are. So I have to, and sometimes I listen to classical music for pleasure, but mostly I listen to the the popular or rock stations.
It's like I would say that your life and your career and everything, it seems, I've known you for 4 years now, right? And it seems like it's tied to music. I mean, most of us use music as an escape. When you're involved in that, that's your living, your livelihood. What kind of refuge you have? Do you still go to music for a refuge, or is it?
I'm enjoying my my harp playing professionally. In a way that for many years I couldn't actually listen to classical music for pleasure because it was so I had so much tension or nervousness built into that, and now I'm not in that frame of mind anymore. Now I can listen, go to a classical music concert and listen and and love it, and in some ways I love it more because I'm involved with it. So it has that personal connection, but. Yeah, I had to get over some of my own neuroses to get to that point.
I remember a few years ago, I was reading an interview with Sting, from the Police, and he actually said basically most rock bands are basically that they're capable of 3 chords. And it started me thinking, I was like, well, then I had people, I didn't know exactly what a chord was, so I talked to friends of mine. I said, that's true, and they said, yeah, pretty much. These bands out here, and it's like they make all these bands out there sound so different. And you put them in a category called rock, but then when you get boiled down to the technical parts of it, there's only basically they're just using 3 chords. And I was like, it's kind of like demystified. And so when you see like a lot of artists, a lot of poets and stuff, and a lot of like Nietzsche would just rhapsodize about it. But when you're involved in it, it would seem like the elements so much of it. It's hard to, you dissected it, you learn it dissected, and then now you're putting it back together for when you do performance. But do you ever find yourself getting caught up in it as much as you say a person who's uninitiated to music and the technical aspects of it?
I'm sorry, I don't understand.
Okay, it's like some people, when people listen to music, they close their eyes to get into music, they get into the song. Do you still have that ability, or are you just analyzing it, the technical aspects?
I'm actually not an analyzer. That's one reason I didn't do very well in a lot of my school, my classes at the music school, I was not a very good student in a lot of ways. Like I practiced really hard, so in that way I was a good student. But a lot of the academic courses were you had to analyze music in a way that just isn't the way that I think about music. I think about music in a very I guess it's right-brained way. I think of colors or moods or images and things like that. So analyzing it in terms of the chords and what the different voices are doing or the structure, that doesn't come naturally to me now. Now that I play more popular music or more by ear, I'm finding that knowing the chords does really help. So I mean, having some theory knowledge is very important, but a lot of the theory just totally goes by me. I'm not I'm not very good at that.
Well, see, I found I had friends who were really great at the theory part, but they weren't very good musicians. They're very good at analyzing stuff and deconstructing it, but they couldn't deliver it as a flow to it. They couldn't do it. It was just too disjointed. I think they kept it disjointed because they analyzed it so much in compartments.
Right.
So much. They just had a hard time bringing it together again.
Of course, since I'm not of that way of thinking, I would say, yeah, that's right. If you're too analytical, it's not good for your music. But I'm not so sure that's true necessarily. I mean, there are a lot of people who have very analytical minds and are excellent musicians. So I think it's just a matter of, the individual. So
I think so too. I mean, obviously, there's a correlation between a person who's musically gifted and being great at mathematics. I mean, Huey Lewis, I guess, has scored a perfect score on some ACT or SAT score, and they thought he cheated, so he went back. He took the math section over again. He scored the same score, and because you do have to think in numbers, to some degree when you're in music,
right?
I mean, the notes and everything, and the pause and all that. So I mean, you do think that way, I think so. Plus, the lines and stuff. I think it's all mathematical. I mean, that's what the theory is. When I was in this one cognitive psychology class taught me. But, it's...
Well, my dad's a mathematician, so, I mean, I might have some of that ability somewhere, but it's... I don't know. I was probably in school. I was slightly above average in math, but I was never particularly good at it.
Yeah, and there's a kid in my neighborhood actually who is autistic. Asperger's syndrome. That's one of the more well known. And I'm sitting there talking about stuff, and I'll just throw out some numbers, and he adds it up in his head. It's like, bam, big numbers. and I'm like, just amazing. And also, he has a tendency, which I always thought was kind of strange about Asperger's, because they're supposed to be they don't relate to people. Well, they don't have like a highly. I guess they can't really pick up on emotions that well. They don't really think it's important, or they just don't seem to grasp the concept of emotions. But when it's in a song, it impacts upon him stronger than if it was actually people around him.
Yeah, I read some article recently, for whatever it's worth, saying that's not true, that that's a myth that people with Asperger's or autism don't feel emotions or don't empathize with other people. In fact, it's the opposite. They empathize too strongly, or something like that. So I'm not sure. I think people don't really understand those things very well yet.
Well, you just got dissenting information given out by the people who are supposed to be experts too.
Right,
I mean, you read any pamphlet. With the pamphlets I read on it, basically said they didn't have the ability to pick up on emotions and deal with emotions. And and I think everything scientific in the scientific area, basically, that's a good working theory until somebody comes along with something better and has
which is often totally the opposite of whatever the previous theory was.
But it works. I mean, it does happen. I mean, medical science is that way. They used to say put butter on burns. Now they say don't put butter on burns. That kind of stuff. I mean,
right.
But anyway, now music though is like your whole family. Your family does have appreciation for music. They obviously encouraged. We talked about that before. Your mom and dad definitely made some sacrifices to get you where you're at now. I mean,
they're still making sacrifices for me. Yes, right.
No, it's like, just like, do you ever? It's like I can't imagine. See, Tommy Shaw one time said he only had one job and he was like helping a surveyor out, and he found himself knowing that he wasn't committed to the job when he was taking his guitar along with him on the job, and that's what he was doing most of the time. He only lasted like 3 days in the actual job, and thank God he had real good talent and was able to latch on and work with other bands that provided a steady income, But it is definitely you got a harder harder path for you if you're a musician than somebody who's maybe good at computers or,
right.
Something like that. You definitely have to have more, I think, ability to persevere, I think, because you probably do have setbacks. Did you have a lot of setbacks when you're starting?
I don't know. I mean, a lot of ways I was, like you're saying, my parents helped me a lot, and I had good teachers, and so I can't really say I had a lot of setbacks. I mean, well, one setback you always have is your own limitations. So, like, I wasn't someone that music. There are some people who are sort of maybe child prodigies or people who just pick things up like that, and I guess I'm not in general someone who does pick things up very quickly. So I had to work pretty hard, and like I think you said, persistent. I think I had to be really persistent to be able to, to learn to play the harp pretty well, because it didn't really come naturally to me.
No, I mean, I don't say a harp. Look at the size of it. Look at the number of strings on it, and I don't know how you keep it all going. I mean, you have to be thinking. You're doing 2 to 3 things at once when you play any instrument. Like piano comes to mind. You have 2 hands playing different parts. They're not in competition with each other, complementary, or at least they're supposed to be. and unless you're doing a John Cage piece or something like that, I guess. But it's like there's a lot of things going on in the mind, and I think a lot of times, I've asked other musicians about that, and they don't realize that. But they put people on, they hooked them up to machines. They got these things going on about the brain activity, and they can measure that. And there's a lot of things going on, both spheres of the hemispheres of the brain, and I think there's a lot of crossover. That's my theory, and it's coming out true. They used to say this one was associated with this side, and this side associated with that. Well, there's a tendency, but there's also a lot of overlap as well in the brain activity. But I mean, when you're playing some song, do you actually, what's going through your head? I mean, do you go like, oh, this comes up here now, this one's got, or is there a flow to it that you just, because you're so used to doing it?
Probably some of both. You have to think somewhat about what you're doing, like with which string you're going to play next, or what chords. You have to think about that somewhat, but then some of it's that you're used to playing it, and some of it's also what kind of mood you're trying to convey. Like this part's really exciting, or you want to be very sensitive, like what kind of mental picture. Sometimes though, if you get I've done this a few times recently, so sometimes you can botch something by being so tuned into what you want to convey. Like if you're aware that this is the most exciting part of the piece coming up, that can ruin it, because that once you start thinking about it, it kind of is a distraction. So so you have to balance out. You have to think about it in different ways at different times so that you don't get distracted.
So anyway, I'm gonna hit you up to play another song here, and you want to tell us before you play it, or you want to tell us as after you play it what it was and where it's coming from,
Okay. This is another. Well, one of the programs that the EMU Foundation Fund. Part of it's going to the Jewish Studies program. So this is a little, my little jazzed up version of one of the prayers, the Hebrew prayers that we do in the synagogue, the Shema.
Okay.
Is
it like the one that goes, "Oh, hear Israel"? Is that?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
Yeah, Shema Israel, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. So the tune, which means hear, O Israel. I'm sorry, Israel. Our Lord is Adonai, and the Lord is one, and the tune would be Shema Israel, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Except it would sound better because you'd have probably someone really good singing it. But
okay.
Well, but this is my jazzed up version of it. that was one of the shorter ones on there. So, because that was short, maybe I'll do another one. This one's a little bit longer. This tune is called Wellspring.
Okay. Very good, very good. Now, this is also one of your original material?
Yeah.
Wow, I mean, this was, you know, I'm always impressed by anybody who can write music. I mean, and I don't know how they do it. I mean, it's like, when you do it, do you have to write it down immediately or record it so you can actually, or do you have a good way of recalling that?
It's better if I jot something down so I don't forget it. Sometimes, like if I make something up, I'll remember it, but if it's really good and I want to make sure I don't forget it, I try to write down something, but you know, I might write down the notes and some approximation of the rhythm. Like I don't carry around manuscript paper to write it down, but I write down something that's close enough that, you know, like the letter names of the notes plus like 1, 2, and, or, you know, whatever the rhythm is, and something like that.
Now, do you find yourself, do you have to be sitting at your harp to compose something, or do you have it going in your head and you could just jot it down, or?
I think most of the time I am sitting at my harp. Sometimes I'm just noodling around with my fingers and they stumble upon something and it happens to sound good, and that's how it starts. And and less often, but still sometimes I'll hear a melody in my head, and you know, I'll hear it in my head and then sit down at the harp and work it out. And usually the way I hear it in my head isn't exactly the way that it is when I finish it. Like sometimes it'll sound good in my head one way, but then when I sit down at the harp, something else seems more natural, or you know, it gets slightly like a different character, or something changes. But
I have the same experience when I write something. I write something down when I go to type it, you know, for usually it's research or whatever. And then when I'm hearing it in my head or as it's coming out on the paper, I see this is a better way to go with this.
Mm-hmm.
This flows better. So I guess there's some similarities in that then.
Right. Yeah.
So anyway, we're talking about your new album again. Now, where people can, are they interested, when they're interested in buying it, where would they go to get this, your new album?
Okay. Well, it'll be available at my concert that I'm promoting, which is March 16th at the Ladies Literary Club. But also they can contact me, and I guess my email is laurelfedharp@gmail.com. That's Laurel. Well, you'll put it on the screen probably.
Yeah, no, I know I'll put it up though because it's right here. So yeah, you got a laurelfedharp@gmail.com. Yep.
Right.
You got it right. No.
Yeah, that's right. Okay. Yeah, so they can contact, and it's, as I was saying, I'm trying to raise money for the EMU Foundation for this fund in honor of Jeff Bernstein. So what they would do is make out a check to the EMU Foundation, and in the memo line put in honor of Jeff Bernstein, and you know, for $10 or more, and I'll send them my CD and you know, give their check to the foundation, of course.
Now, the actual event itself is, which is going to be Sunday, March 16th at 2 p.m. The Ladies Literary Club at 218 North Washington Street, Ypsilanti, Michigan. Cross streets between Washington Avenue and Washington Avenue and Emmett Street. It's going to be at 218 North Washington Street, excuse me, in Ypsilanti, Michigan. And the number here is 734-482-7615. So I guess they can call there for different maybe directions or whatever.
For sure.
No, I think that's really generous of you to not only donate your time, but also the proceeds from the selling of the CD to this event and to this cause. I mean, and that's definitely a sacrifice on your behalf.
Well, it's not a sacrifice. It's something I'm enjoying doing. So.
Well, but the thing is, you're giving up something of that you could use for yourself, to, you know, for somebody else, for a cause, and I think that's really admirable. So anyway, I'll tell you what, I'm gonna have this, like, you know, emblazoned everywhere when I could, you know, when I put this up. And I'll tell you what, I wanted to just lead us off with another song, and before we wrap it up, though, I'd like to say thank you again for coming in, and tell us what piece you're going to think about playing for us, and we'll head out that direction, okay? Wrap it up.
Okay, this is another one off the CD. It's called Under the Arch, because Professor Bernstein went to his school. He was Washington University in St. Louis, and there's a big arch there. And that's about all I know about St. Louis is the Gateway Arch. But yeah, he went to school there, and that's where he met his wife. So anyway, I thought of writing this piece called Under the Arch, and it has glissandos in it, which are like that. And I made it up because none of the other pieces on my album had many glissandos, so I thought I should have one that did.
Well, thank you very much, Laurel. And again, thank you very much for coming all the way up here to Flint and entertaining us and talk about this upcoming event. And I hope it's a smashing success for everybody, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.